Being able to get the top-of-the-line peripherals has always come with a big price tag. But to look deeply into the scope, let's focus on gaming. A couple of years ago, gaming mice was considered to be a luxury. Only the elite gamers can have. Well, now cheap 8000Hz mice are in the market with a price range of $50 to $100. Insane. In which before it could cost you an arm and a leg. Talking about you, Logitech. Speaking of an arm and a leg, a luxury peripheral that rose in the gaming scene has just caught waves of gamers alike. Many critics of all varying occupations, such as pro players, regard this king as almost cheating in FPS games. And the most infamously targeted audience of this peripheral, rhythm gamers. Specifically, OSU gamers. What am I talking about exactly? Well, it's none other than the king of gaming keyboards themselves, the wooting 60HE, and how it might get dethroned as the only good and high quality Hall effect keyboard. So to briefly sum it up and why this keyboard is so good amongst pro players and gamers alike, it has this one function, rapid trigger. Rapid trigger is a function in most holific keyboards in which it may give you a competitive advantage. Due to the fact that you can have your actuation point anywhere on the switch, but also upon said releasing switch, it automatically deactivates the switch and you can immediately press it down again to activate. It's a very useful function. Now, the only problem I see with this is nothing at all. In fact, I love wooting. I love what they're doing to the scene. I see my favorite OSU players glaze and praise this keyboard. I see my GOAT 10s on the recent VCT frag out with this specific keyboard. Though I'm not certain it's because of the keyboard, but I am sure that most of the players there do own a 60HE and know what its competitive advantages can be. This can be the difference between counter-strafing in Valorant and CS, hitting an ability in League or Dota, or as simple as tapping to the beat in OSU. This function has almost become a necessity for people who are playing at the highest level in their respective games. Being Hall effect, this also has a lot of functions outside of rapid trigger. You have analog inputs in which you can dynamically press the button and it senses whether or not you're pressing it too hard or too lightly. You have dynamic keystroke in which you can set multiple actuation points on your switch to do multiple various functions. And customizable lighting options that responds directly to the Hall effect sensors on the switch. But there comes a cost. A very high cost. The wooting 60HE costs roughly around $180. People would say that this is fairly priced considering its top-notch capabilities in gaming. But what about the average Joe who just wants the specific functions but doesn't have $180 to shell out? There has been a lot of Hall effect keyboards suddenly popping out in the market. Like for example, the second most arguably famous Hall effect keyboard out there, the Redragon A75. You also have other companies such as Endgame, High Ground, SteelSeries, and Razer that are copying the exact same features that the wooting 60HE so predominantly dominates in its category. That being rapid trigger. But a lot of people who owns this quote-unquote second-rate product, like the brands that I just mentioned, have accounts that it's very competitive. An example would be Akolibet, a player that holds the top 1 PP record in his respective game, OSU. With what equipment? Well, none other than the drunk beer. Okay, enough explaining. You guys came here because of the title of this video, a Tyranny being dethroned. With large amounts of Hall effect keyboards being produced right now, I may say that this one that I have right now is very compelling given at its competitive price point, $60. It is of course the Redragon K68 or M61 depending on what region you are in. Now, Redragon has this branding of being an entry-level gaming peripheral manufacturer, and some of their keyboards I actually bought myself, in which some of it was purely off of allowance. I had no work during that time, I had no source of income besides my parents. Some had a 1000Hz polling rate, good mechanical switch choices, and some even had customizability options. But for this one, it has a very special place in my heart. I may be biased, but to see Redragon, the entry-level guys that I've been attached to since I was a mere child, trying to compete with a tyrant is a bit heartwarming. This keyboard has, in my opinion, not the best but a very good design, since custom gaming keyboards do exist. But if you want something out of the gaming aesthetic, this is definitely it. Also, can I mention the fact that this is one of the first Redragon keyboards that I own that doesn't look like pure RGB vomit or purely targeted by that gaming aesthetic? Kudos on you, Redragon. I must admit, the software is not the best. It's very Redragon-like. If you've tried the Redragon software, yeah, You get what I mean. It's partly because of its confusing user interface that's barely user-friendly. If my grandma were to use this app, she'd think she'd be launching the Apollo 11 again. Minus the fact that it has this weird bug when I try to save my actuation points. It really doesn't save at all, but we'll get through those problems again later. Well, if you compare it to the wooting, in which you can set your settings in your browser itself without having to download any apps, this one fails in comparison. Oh yeah, this doesn't have analog input as well. I would have loved to test this in some racing game. In some games that requires analog input. Overwatch has analog input. I want to try it, but I can't. It doesn't have it. Now going back, for the main feature, Rapid Trigger. It really does feel like Rapid Trigger is in effect. I have tested it multiple times in multiple games, in multiple softwares, in multiple everything. But again, setting it up for the first time really gave me tedious headaches. Again, it doesn't save. Saving your settings one key at a time did do the trick. Again, I have tried every possible way to test out Rapid Trigger. It may be on Valorant, it may be on Overwatch, it may be on Osu. I have tried everything, and I do feel like Rapid Trigger is in effect. And it really does feel that the actuation point of 0.1 millimeters is in effect also. The slightest bump, I touch this keyboard and lift it up, it actuates and re-actuates again. Amazing. $60 price point, by the way. It does the job for me tenfold. It's very responsive. No misinputs are detected unless it's 0.1 millimeter, in which I expected a lot of misinputs to occur since this is my first Hall effect keyboard. From playing Valorant and having to counter strafe on my old keyboard, now I can just let go of the key and expect it to stop immediately. Or even an Osu. From being able to quickly tap bursts again and having use of my stamina less of the time, it really does feel like I have control again. Maybe this is why wooting has their tagline as take control, because it really does feel like you have full and 100% control. I mean, granted, this isn't the best Hall effect keyboard out there. You have the Drunk Deer, you have the Razer, the Steel Series, all of those brands combined. I can't even do a proper comparison with those keyboards that I just mentioned because I don't have them. Wooting, I still love you. I still think you're the best. Please give me a keyboard. Thank you. But again, we are looking at the price to value comparison here. And the Redragon K68 does offer a compelling argument. There's a lot that this keyboard can and can't do. But if you look past aside its janky software and have an open mind to the idea that this is a $60 gaming Hall effect keyboard that anyone can just get because it's being mass produced, well, what's stopping other companies from following suit? I'm looking at you, Razer. This could be a start for a future of accessibility for gamers and more casuals to pick it up. It's not necessarily the best of the best. I hope that other companies can follow suit with a very fair price line. Having the accessibility to get this keyboard in the hands of the masses could help a lot of struggling gamers out there on a budget. And with a lot more options, a lot more competition may arise. Competition leads to improvement. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't topple the kingdom with one single pebble.